$91 million over the first 5 years. Came close. It was good faith negotiations, just were not able to get a deal done.
On the left tackle now, ex of the Kansas City Chiefs agreeing to a deal covering 4 years with the Cincinnati Bengals worth some $64 million.
This was not ideal for the Kansas City Chiefs, but at the same time, this was to be expected. There's a lot of roster reconstruction going on for the Kansas City Chiefs currently, and I understand some fans are a little concerned. So we're gonna break everything down for you in one video. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of players that are leaving. One particular case that's fairly confusing as well. So before we get to the content, each and every week we announce a $300 cash prize winner for any subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. You could be an old subscriber or a new subscriber, and this week's giveaway winner is Tabitha Fegley. So congratulations to Tabitha. Make sure you reach out to me via Instagram or Twitter, or just reply in the thread that we were talking on in my latest video so we can figure out a way to get you the $300. And at the same time, we're doing a giveaway on my Twitter account for anyone that retweets that Aaron Rodgers tweet that I posted a couple days ago. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! So here's an update as to how we're doing financially so far. I've made $5,407 so far, but it seems like my followers have been having significantly more success than I have. For example, my man Jess2K was able to make $800 by putting up $80. My man Anthony was able to make $1,250 off of putting up $50. And we're about to ramp things up because it's March Madness, bro. So if you haven't played Prize Picks and you want to make some money with us, all you have to do is go to Prize Picks, download the app, and use my promo code Mikerophone, and they'll give you an additional $100 when you deposit $100. I post pics each and every day onto my Instagram story. I've been doing a lot of research on this recently to try to get us an edge. I've been learning a lot about this niche, by the way, and it's been a lot of fun learning about it, and I highly recommend it. It's a great way to get some action in some games that you may not have been paying attention to. So download Prize Picks and use my promo code Mikerophone to get up to a $100 deposit match, and thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, which is the ultimate prize. And honestly, they have the ultimate prize in the NFL, where they pretty much have the face of the NFL on their team. The only thing that stinks about the Chiefs is the fact that the face of the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, has some very questionable company, but that's really outside of his own control. He can't necessarily control the fact that Jackson is his brother. I mean, he could control the fact that he married his high school sweetheart, but that's not necessarily important. But that aside, that's like nitpicking. That's not even primary, that's not secondary, that's tertiary. But in the case of the Kansas City Chiefs, once you do win the Super Bowl, something fairly unfortunate tends to happen. Every single team in the NFL is going to try to pick apart your roster, get a piece of that Super Bowl winning team from the previous year. Hell, you don't even need to win the Super Bowl for this to happen. Just look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They almost lost Darius Slay, but they re-signed Darius Slay. They almost lost James Bradbury, but they also extended him. They lost Javon Hargrave. They lost TJ Edwards. There's a question about CJ Gardner-Johnson currently as well. They also lost Miles Sanders. Some of these things were inevitable, but that's before we even mention the coaching staff. And in the case of the Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff, I think this particular detail is hysterical. The Philadelphia Eagles primary head coach of the 2000s was Andy Reid. Andy Reid would leave the Philadelphia Eagles in the early 2010s. He would take a job with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he would bring along Doug Peterson to serve as his offensive coordinator. Doug Peterson would get hired by the Philadelphia Eagles a few years after they realized they made a horrific mistake by hiring Chip Kelly. Doug Peterson's offensive coordinator at that time was a man by the name of Frank Reich, who was the offensive coordinator responsible for the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl run a few years ago. As a result of this remarkable run and victory, Frank Reich was hired by the Indianapolis Colts. His offensive coordinator was Nick Sirianni. So when the Philadelphia Eagles fired Doug Peterson, who would they decide to hire? Nick Sirianni. While Nick Sirianni was able to make it to the Super Bowl this past year, his offensive coordinator was Shane Steichen. His defensive coordinator was Jonathan Gannon. When the Indianapolis Colts fired Frank Reich, they brought in Shane Steichen as the offensive coordinator. So if you need to place a bet on who is the most likely Philadelphia Eagles head coach in 2 to 3 years from now. Pay attention to whoever the Indianapolis Colts offensive coordinator is going to be this year. Jokes aside, this isn't atypical. Jonathan Gannon, especially, him leaving to the Arizona Cardinals makes a ton of sense when you consider the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles defense was picked apart, and that's just the Super Bowl runner-up. This is before we get to the team that won the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs have seen a decent exodus from this team, primarily because they depended on some prove-it contracts, and secondarily because, well, these players could get a huge payday going elsewhere, or in one particular case, probably their most important player that they lost, he just wanted some more freedom. So for those of you guys that don't know, at the time that I'm making this video, the main Kansas City Chiefs players that left were Juan Thornhill, who got signed by the Cleveland Browns, Juju Smith-Schuster, who recently signed a 3-year, $33 million deal with the New England Patriots, Michael Burton, Andrew Wiley, and Orlando Brown Jr. Orlando Brown Jr. is probably the most unique scenario here. Now, I don't want you to necessarily think that just because the Kansas City Chiefs made some moves that I personally think might be a little questionable, doesn't necessarily mean that they're in a horrible situation. If you recall last year, I wasn't necessarily concerned that they lost Tyreek Hill, but I think this is a little different because I feel like if you give Patrick Mahomes average to above average wide receivers, he can make it work. But I think if you significantly downgrade his pass protection, that's where we have a huge problem. And if you need a good example of that, look no further than his Super Bowl loss to Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers, primarily because he was facing off against a very stout defensive line, and he had a patchwork offensive line. So in this case, this is very unique. If you guys have been paying attention to this channel, we brought you an update about this about 10 months ago before the season started in regards to Orlando Brown Jr. This man is one hell of a businessman. I don't think you guys understand. This guy's story is truly remarkable. Orlando Brown Jr. was a highly touted offensive lineman coming out of the NFL draft that completely tanked his value by having one of the worst scouting combines in NFL history. At the combine, he put up like 14 reps on the bench press. He had a 5.85 40-yard dash, which was the same as his father's pro day score. He had an 82-inch broad jump and a 19.5 vertical. It's just not necessarily the greatest scouting combine, and as a result, he dropped from a first-round pick to a third-round pick. But the Baltimore Ravens took a chance on him with a third-round pick, and it really paid off big, especially considering the fact that they already had a very good left tackle in Ronnie Stanley. So they decided to put Orlando Brown Jr. at the right tackle position. Ronnie Stanley was still fairly young. He was just drafted 2 years sooner. But in 2020, everything would change. Stanley would sustain a season-ending injury. And as a result, the Baltimore Ravens turned to Orlando Brown Jr., who originally was a left tackle, but he moved to right tackle, and then he moved back to left tackle to fill in for Ronnie Stanley. Well, it turns out that Orlando Brown Jr. was pretty solid at the left tackle position, and left tackles make significantly more money than right tackles. So as a result, when Ronnie Stanley was ready to come back, he told the Ravens straight up that this is strictly a business decision, but if you want to keep me, you either pay me left tackle money or have me play left tackle, or you just trade me. So they decided to trade him in the summer of 2021. Kansas City Chiefs have seen enough at this point. They were traumatized at seeing their prized QB, Patrick Mahomes, get pummeled in the Super Bowl. Had he had a decent offensive line, we may have seen a much more entertaining Super Bowl. So they decided to trade for Orlando Brown Jr. So the Ravens traded Orlando Brown and a second-round pick and a sixth-round pick in exchange for the Chiefs' first-round pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and a 2022 fifth-round pick. This worked out at the end of the day. The Kansas City Chiefs were able to go to the AFC Championship that year, and then the very next year, of course, they would win a Super Bowl. But there'd be another issue. Orlando Brown Jr. wanted a contract extension, but there's a problem here, and it's a very similar problem to the one that the Kansas City Chiefs had with Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes' contract is starting to get a little hairy. If you take a look, the 2021 season, they were able to get away with it because his cap hit was just $7.4 million that season. But in 2022, he had a $35.7 million cap hit. Now he has a $39.69 million cap hit. It's only going to get hairier. Next year, it turns into $46 million. The year after, $48 million. You guys get my point. So why is this significant? Well, it means that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to be very creative whenever it comes to giving out salaries. Chiefs. And in the case of Orlando Brown Jr., this is where there was a little bit of a clashing in terms of contracts, because if you pay attention, this is going to be very, very unique. The Chiefs made some new additions to their team. They went ahead and pursued Jawan Taylor in free agency, and the contract is pretty interesting. Jawan Taylor, who played for the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, got an $80 million deal, including $60 million guaranteed with the Kansas City Chiefs. And one might wonder, what's the plan here? Because very shortly after, we found out that Orlando Brown Jr. would also get a significant contract, ironically, with the rival Cincinnati Bengals, who ironically were in a similar position as the Kansas City Chiefs were. They're traumatized from seeing Joe Burrow getting pummeled whenever he drops back. So they decided to finalize a 4-year, $64 million front-loaded deal that includes a $31 million signing bonus. This is the largest ever for an offensive lineman. So you might be looking at this saying, wait, hold on. Like, I just did the advanced calculus, and Orlando Brown got paid less than Jawan Taylor. On top of that, if you look at all sorts of metrics, but let's use the most pedestrian metric there is out there, which is Pro Football Focus. Yes, I know.
Mike, you're such a casual. You use Pro Football Focus for offensive line grades.
Well, it's the best way to determine how good an offensive lineman is with run blocking, because there isn't really good statistics out there for offensive linemen. When you factor this in, you kind of get confused, because when you compare Jawan Taylor, for example, over the past couple of years, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, and then you compare that to Orlando Brown Jr., these two aren't even in the same ballpark when it comes to being an offensive lineman. Orlando Brown Jr., you can see significantly better when it comes to Pro Football Focus in his grades. He's not necessarily like a super elite left tackle, but at the same time, he is better than Jawan Taylor. This resulted in some theories. There is this one particular rumor that the Kansas City Chiefs are pursuing a trade of Laramie Tunsil from the Houston Texans, who apparently are dismantling their entire team to get additional draft capital. Makes a lot of sense if you ask me. I don't think that's going to be very ideal, especially if you decide to select Bryce Young with the 2nd overall pick, but it's just one speculative report out there. Another thing is that Jawan Taylor might not be playing left tackle for the Chiefs. He might be playing right tackle. This also begs the question, why would Orlando Brown Jr. take less money to sign with the Cincinnati Bengals over the Kansas City Chiefs? I mean, don't get me wrong, if he wants to hop teams, you'd imagine that he would accept the same type of deal that Jawan Taylor did. Well, the details kind of suggest something else. Orlando Brown Jr. wanted a front-loaded deal. This contract, it says 4 years. It's not really a 4-year deal. It's more like a 2-year deal, and he could opt out after the 2nd year, which is significant because by then, Orlando Brown Jr. will be 28 years old, which means that he could opt out and sign one more significant contract when he's technically in his prime with another team. I gotta admit, for Orlando Brown's talent, and I'm not insulting the man's talent, I think he's very, very above average to good as a left tackle. I'm not saying he's the next coming of Anthony Munoz, but I'm saying he's very good. The Chiefs won a Super Bowl for a reason. I have to give props to Orlando Brown as a businessman. This makes a lot of sense for him. I could understand why he did that. For the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm gonna be honest, I am not convinced that they are willing to downgrade to Jawan Taylor. I think the reason why his contract looks significantly better is because it's backloaded, and that's what they have to do in order to put talent around Mahomes, considering the contract that he currently has. With that being said, what's the plan here? The Chiefs make a horrific mistake? No, because they're doing what they can in the confines of the situation that they're in, and I'm sure number 15 has a say in all of their decisions. I will admit, if Jawan Taylor is the end-all be-all at this position, yes, I would be concerned. He's a significantly worse run blocker. He's the worst pass blocker as well. So I'm not convinced that he's the answer at left tackle. I think he's going to play center. He might play right tackle. Maybe the Chiefs address this in the NFL draft. I'm not necessarily sure. All I could tell you is he can't be the answer here. So in a nutshell, if you take a look at the Chiefs offseason, it is concerning. They did bring in Charles Omenihu. They did bring back back Jordy Fortson. They did bring in Turk Wharton and Jawan Taylor, and they cut Frank Clark. Not necessarily something that screams excitement, but what if they're trying to plan something bigger? You really think that the Chiefs are going to go into this season possibly without Nicole Hardman as well, by the way, because he's technically a free agent? Do you think they're going to go into this season with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Justin Ross as their top 2 wide receivers? I highly doubt it. I think there's something in the works. They've been linked to Odell Beckham Jr. They've been linked to DeAndre Hopkins. Do I necessarily think that's for sure going to happen? Well, there's been players that reached out to Patrick Mahomes stating their interest in playing with Patrick Mahomes. If there's something that Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr.'s drama from last year should teach you, where his father went ahead and picked apart some film that made Baker Mayfield look bad because he wasn't targeting Odell Beckham Jr. when he was open, it's the fact that wide receivers will take a pay cut, especially wide receivers that are in need of a prove-it deal. For example, Juju Smith-Schuster last year. They will take a pay cut to play with a very established quarterback that will make them look good, because that could result in more money in the future. So I'm not necessarily thinking that the Chiefs are going to go into the season with this type of roster, but I will say you can make an argument that the loss of Orlando Brown Jr. is as significant, if not even potentially more significant, than the Chiefs losing Tyreek Hill. But that's because I think the man protecting your quarterback's blind side is significantly more important than one of the best wide receivers in the league, especially when you have Mahomes that has the ability to make wide receivers look good. And I know that could be a bold take, so let me know if you agree with me in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.